for the news in detail. We begin with Pakistan, which says India might stage a false flag operation to implicate and target Pakistan. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said he would write a letter to the UN Security Council's president over the situation. He said New Delhi desperately wants to divert the world's attention from its atrocities in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Qureshi said India is also hatching conspiracies to disrupt peace in Pakistan's midwestern Balochistan province. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has rejected India's recently introduced domicile law in occupied Kashmir. In a statement, the body said India is mischievously using the COVID-19 pandemic to alter the demography of the Muslim majority in the valley. The bloc's Human Rights Commission says the people of Kashmir have squarely denounced the law as yet another illegal move. The commission said such steps by New Delhi are designed to systematically pave the way for settlement colonialism. It said India is institutionalizing a system of domination over indigenous Muslims by converting them into a minority within their homeland. The body called it a violation of human rights of Kashmiris under treaties including Articles 27 and 49 of the 4th Geneva Convention. Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Farooqi has said Islamabad welcomes the OIC statement. The occupied valley has been reeling under New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout for the past 290 days. Massive protests and rallies have broken out in occupied Kashmir after the martyrdom of a freedom fighter, Junaid Sahrai. Yesterday, Indian forces martyred Sahrai and his associate during a cordon and search operation in the valley's capital, Srinagar. Defying the curfew, people came out of their houses and chanted anti-India and pro-freedom slogans. Indian troops fired pellets and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators, wounding dozens of civilians. Meanwhile, hundreds of people participated in the funeral prayers in absentia for the freedom fighter in Srinagar. The funeral outside the house of the martyred was led by his father and pro-freedom leader Ashraf Sahrai. Occupation forces have martyred 7 Kashmiris in the ongoing month of May. Pakistan has recorded the highest number of single-day COVID-19 deaths as 46 people lost their lives, taking the toll to 985. The Health Ministry reports 1,932 new cases over the last 24 hours, bringing the total to nearly 46,000. The ministry said over 13,000 patients have recovered so far, while 344 remain critical. It said more than 414,000 tests have been conducted countrywide, with nearly 14,000 since yesterday. Meanwhile, the Asian Development Bank has approved a $300 million loan to strengthen Pakistan's COVID-19 fight. The project will support the purchase of medical supplies and personal protective equipment for health workers. In the U.S., over 1,500 more people have died from COVID-19 as the country's death toll nears 92,000. Worldwide, the death count has crossed 323,000 with nearly 4.9 million infections. More on that now in this report.
While COVID-19 curve appears to be flattening in many parts of the world, the virus continues to surge across Latin America. Brazil's daily death toll jumped to a record 1,179, increasing its tally to nearly 18,000. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is considering imposing a complete travel ban from Brazil.
I don't want people coming in here and affecting our people. I don't want people over there sick either. We're helping Brazil with ventilators. We're sending them ventilators, okay? They need ventilators. I'm sending them ventilators. We have so many thousands of them. We're sending them. We're sending a lot of people. No, Brazil is having some trouble. No question about it.
The Pan-American Health Organization also warned of mass virus spread at tri-border area of Amazon.
Protecting vulnerable groups is critical to addressing the health, social, and economic emergencies and winning the fight against COVID-19. It's necessary because we can't stop the spread of the virus if we don't focus on all those affected by it, including vulnerable population.
In North America, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico have extended their agreements to keep their shared borders closed to non-essential travel till June 21st.
On to Afghanistan, where officials say gunmen have opened fire at a mosque in the central Parwan province, killing at least 9 worshippers and wounding 10 others. Police said the gunmen stormed the mosque when worshippers were offering evening prayers after breaking their Ramadan fast. In a separate incident, 8 government soldiers have been killed, repelling a fierce attack on northern Kunduz city. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said Taliban fighters attacked several government posts on the outskirts of the city. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the Kunduz raid while blaming Kabul for the mosque attack. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has arrived in Kabul to push the Taliban and the government for intra-Afghan talks. Former U.S. Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has strongly opposed Israel's plans to annex parts of the West Bank and Jordan Valley. During a virtual fundraiser, Biden said Tel Aviv's plans will damage any hopes for peace in the decade-old conflict. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee said U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East plan has undercut the peace process. Meanwhile, Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas has voided all pacts with Israel and the U.S. after Tel Aviv announced going ahead with the annexation. Palestinian state media said Abbas made the announcement during an emergency meeting held in Ramallah to discuss the Israeli plans. The United Arab Emirates Etihad Airways has taken its first known flight to Israel to deliver COVID-19 aid to Palestinians. In a statement, an Etihad spokeswoman said there were no passengers on board. Israel does not have diplomatic relations with any of the 6 Gulf Arab countries, and there are no commercial flights between them. In the past, private and diplomatic planes often had to travel to a third country before heading on to Israel. The United Kingdom and the U.S. have denounced Russia's role in Libya, accusing it of sending mercenaries into the conflict. Both countries issued statements after a recent UN report confirmed the presence of Russian and Syrian fighters in the country. The UK's deputy envoy to the UN, Jonathan Allen, said London remains concerned as external parties continue to provide arms and mercenaries. The U.S. envoy to the UN, Kelly Craft, said all actors involved in the conflict in Libya must immediately suspend military operations. Allen and Kraft's Russian counterpart, Vasily Nebenzia, dismissed the claims as speculation. He said for the most part, the report is based on unverified or clearly fabricated data and is aimed at discrediting Russia's policy in Libya. The Libyan army has captured 2 towns near the Tunisian border from the militias of renegade warlord Khalifa Haftar. In a statement, the Libyan National Army spokesman Ahmed al-Mismari said the forces carried out repositioning on the battlefronts. He said forces entered the towns of Badr and Tej and were welcomed by local residents. Earlier, the Libyan army recaptured the strategic Al-Watia airbase south of Tripoli, which had been under Haftar's control for about 6 years. The Libyan government has been under attack by Haftar's forces since April 2019, with over 1,000 killed in the violence. Polling is underway in Burundi's first competitive presidential election since the 1993 civil war. The Election Commission has called for a peaceful vote despite simmering political violence and the coronavirus outbreak. In a statement, the commission asked voters to leave immediately after casting ballots, as no gatherings are allowed near polling stations. President Pierre Nkurunziza will step down after 15 years in power. His ruling party candidate, retired Army General Evariste Ndayishimiye, is running against opposition leader Agathon Rwasa and 5 others. The election is meant to usher in the first democratic transition in 58 years of independence for the impoverished East African nation. The government has refused any observers from the UN or African Union for monitoring the elections, accusing them of being biased. Moscow has called for redeployment, or has called the redeployment of U.S. nuclear arms from Germany to Poland a direct violation of a Russia-NATO pact. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the 1997 agreement between Russia and NATO was drafted to overcome the lack of trust and reduce the threat of war. He said the agreement prohibits the deployment of nuclear weapons on the territory of new members of the North Atlantic Alliance. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry said Moscow hopes Washington and Warsaw are aware of the dangerous nature of such moves. On the 15th of May, U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Georgette Mosbacher, said there is a possibility of U.S. nuclear weapons relocation from Germany to Poland. A Russian military helicopter has crashed outside Moscow during a training flight, killing the crew on board. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said the helicopter crashed in a secluded area some 20 kilometers from the town. The ministry said the airliner was not carrying any ammunition and probably a technical malfunction had caused the crash. It said a commission has been dispatched to the scene to further investigate the crash. The ministry did not specify the number of deaths during the Mi-8's crash landing. I'll be back after this break with plenty more news. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan will address the emergency meeting of the World Economic Forum today via video link. The meeting, which will be attended by leaders of the entire world, will discuss the coronavirus pandemic and its effects on the world. The Prime Minister will apprise the forum about steps taken by Pakistan to curb the spread of novel coronavirus. Earlier, the World Economic Forum President, Burundi, invited Prime Minister Imran Khan to attend the forum. He said there are close to 1,000 companies on the WEF COVID Action Platform and over 50 projects coming out of the public-private cooperation. Millions of migrant workers in India continue walking back to their homes as they express complete hopelessness over the government and its policies. Workers say they are stuck at state borders, dying in road accidents. They said the process to register for tickets is complicated and the fares are unaffordable and only a few trains are operational. The laborers said the government wants them to register online when internet cafes are shut, they are out of phone data, and no recharge shops are open. The U.S. Navy says it will take lawful defensive measures against vessels that come within 100 meters of its warships in the Middle East. The Navy issued the notice to mariners after a recent close encounter with Iranian vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The notice read armed vessels approaching U.S. naval ships may be interpreted as a threat. The Navy spokesperson said its ships are conducting routine operations in international waters and do not seek conflict. They said the U.S. Navy commanding officers retain the right to self-defense if deemed necessary. Defensive measures have already included turning a ship away from the approaching vessel, shooting off flares, and firing warning shots. The mention of a specific distance is new for the American Navy. The U.S. and China have once again clashed over the COVID-19 pandemic. This time, ongoing tensions spilled over at the UN Security Council meeting held to discuss humanitarian aid operations in Syria. U.S. envoy Kelly Craft called on Beijing to support the UN to combat the outbreak by delivering life-saving aid to Syria. In response, the Chinese diplomat Zhang Jun urged Washington to stop playing political games to divert attention from its failures. Last month, Washington suspended funding to the WHO, accusing the UN agency of covering Chinese disinformation about the outbreak. The standoff has also caused a delay in adopting a UNSC resolution calling for a global ceasefire amid the contagion. Deforestation in Brazil's Amazon rainforest has risen by 64% in the month of April in comparison with the same month last year. Brazil's National Institute for Space Research said in the first 4 months of 2020, deforestation was up by 55% from a year ago. More in this report.
The Amazon deforestation reached an 11-year high last year and continues to climb in 2020. Scientists say the world's largest tropical rainforest remains vital to curb global warming. Activists say increasing commercial activity has emboldened illegal loggers, miners, and ranchers.
In the last deforestation bulletin for April 2020, we noted a considerable increase in deforestation in the Amazon. When we consider the 10-year history of our data, we determined that April has the highest rate of forest loss in the region. It is an area of 529 square kilometers, the equivalent of the city of Porto Alegre.
The activists say the commercial activity can also spread contagious diseases into natives.
Deforestation also carries a huge risk of COVID-19 infection. You need people to deforest, and there is much invasion of indigenous lands, and these people can carry COVID-19 to the regions, putting local and indigenous populations at risk.
Meanwhile, British supermarkets have warned Brazil of boycotting its products over a bill that could enable faster destruction of the rainforest. More than 40 companies signed an open letter urging Brazil's national legislature to reject the proposed bill backed by President Jair Bolsonaro.
Venezuela's central bank has filed a legal claim to force the Bank of England to hand over gold worth $1 billion. The document submitted in a London commercial court seeks an order requiring the Bank of England to comply with the claim. The claim says once transferred to the UN Development Program, the funds will be used to aid Venezuela's pandemic emergency. This follows Caracas's request to the Bank of England in April to sell part of its gold reserves and send the proceeds to the UN. Since 2018, the Bank of England has delayed the transfer of 31,000 kilograms of Venezuelan gold, claiming the illegitimacy of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. The Maduro administration has been selling off the country's gold reserves to raise funds amid crippling U.S. sanctions. The U.S.-based telecom giant AT&T is shutting down its DirecTV subscription access to Venezuela, citing U.S. sanctions. In a statement, the company said it was becoming impossible for DirecTV units to comply with the legal requirements of both countries. The U.S. sanctions prohibit companies from contracting with Caracas, while Venezuelan laws require subscription services to carry government channels. For years, DirecTV has provided Venezuelans with access to foreign channels. Experts say the sudden termination of services will significantly affect half of the Venezuelan population.
The cessation of DirecTV operations leaves 2 million homes without a television service from today, plus 600 employees out of work. 23 years of history that goes out in a second. Unfortunately, this affects half of the Venezuelan population in a significant way, mainly users of this service who live in poorer areas that had DirecTV. Although it is an expensive service, in Venezuela it has always been a cheap service. The cost of a DirecTV service is around $1 per month or maybe less.
EasyJet says a highly sophisticated cyber attack has affected approximately 9 million customers. It said email addresses and travel details have been stolen and credit card details of over 2,000 customers have been compromised. In a statement, the budget carrier said there is no evidence that any personal information of any nature has been misused. The company said it has engaged forensic experts to investigate the issue and has also notified Britain's National Cybersecurity Centre. It advised people whose data has been hacked to stay alert. European stock markets have slid into negative territory. Investors are closely following the development over potential COVID-19 vaccine earlier announced by the U.S. biotechnology company Moderna. The CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 0.5% higher. London's FTSE 100 is trading marginally lower, while Frankfurt's DAX is trading flat. In Asia, the Nikkei 225 closed nearly 1% higher, while Seoul's Kospi gained nearly 0.5%. The Shanghai Composite lost over 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng remained flat. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price gained over 0.5%. Heavy rains and winds have lashed India's two eastern states and parts of Bangladesh hours before a super cyclone made landfall. The two countries have evacuated millions of villagers to higher ground in an operation complicated by the coronavirus pandemic. Indian officials said Amphan is likely to turn into an extremely severe cyclonic storm across the coast near West Bengal. Officials said West Bengal and Odisha states are struggling to house thousands as shelters are being used as quarantine centers. They said extra shelters are being prepared in wholesale markets and government buildings, keeping social distancing in mind. Railway officials have diverted trains away from the cyclone's path to protect thousands of migrant workers traveling to eastern states. Meanwhile, Bangladesh's officials said they are evacuating about 2 million people as Amphan approaches from the Bay of Bengal. Heavy flooding has collapsed 2 dams in central Michigan, prompting an evacuation of about 10,000 people. The Sanford Dam was the first to collapse, followed by Edenville. The National Weather Service has issued a flash flood warning for the area, urging citizens to seek higher ground. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has declared an emergency for Midland County, anticipating a historic high water level. Whitmer says water levels in downtown could reach 2.7 meters high in the next 12 to 15 hours.
In the next 12 to 15 hours, downtown Midland could be under approximately 9 feet of water. We are anticipating an historic high water level. Tonight, I issued an emergency declaration to ensure that state and local officials have the resources that they need in order to respond to this extreme flooding.
Well, for the latest updates on these and other stories, you can always follow us on our social media at Indus.news. Thanks for watching.